welcome. I am Save the Frogs founder, Dr. Carrie Krieger. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be learning about protecting the foothill yellow-legged frogs of Marin County, California. And go ahead, chat in where in the world you are. I am in Colombia currently. I have lived in California in the past and have visited these foothill yellow-legged frogs. And it's a great site, and I've been interested in this project for a long time. So we're happy to have Suzanne Whelan here. She's a volunteer coordinator and ecologist for Marin Water, where she's been for 13 years or so. She holds a Master of Science degree in Environmental Education from Lesley University with an interest in experiential education. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Suzanne. Feel free to tell us anything you want about yourself, this project, these frogs, and how everybody out there can get involved with this project or take the ideas from this project and implement it in their own community.
Thank you, Carrie, and welcome everybody. Yeah, glad we finally connected after all these years of, I've been a big fan of your organization as well. So glad to put Marin on the international map here. I'll do a quick introduction and then I'm gonna actually do a little trivia so that if people filtered in, they won't miss anything too important. So I work for Marin Water, which is in Marin County, California, and our mission is to sustainably manage our natural resources and also to deliver drinking water to 190,000 people in Marin County. So the first part of our mission is to sustainably manage our natural resources. That means that we're stewards of the lands and the lakes that are under our care. So that's 20,000 acres of Mount Tamalpais. And we have to manage this land for human use above just water storage. You know, we're responsible for the clean air, access to recreation and respite, protection from wildfires, invasive species, things like that. So being part of Marin County, we share the land with countless other creatures who depend on the land's bounty and beauty. Marin County has more land set aside for open space and critical habitats than any other county in the Bay Area. So if you enjoy the benefits of a clean environment, you can also support natural places by becoming a volunteer and becoming an advocate for the environment, wherever it is you work or live, sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna start with some trivia. And people can throw answers in the chat if they want, but we're going to go kind of fast. So you're all muted, but you can, yell out your answer at home and we'll go through the answers too. Okay, so frog trivia. This is just a fun way for us to get warmed up. And all the photos we have today are going to be California native frogs and toads. So first is, how many native frog species are found in California, do you think? I need the Jeopardy music. Insert Jeopardy music here. Okay, the answer is, thank you. The answer is there are 18 native frog species in California, 3 which are found in Marin County. And this is true frogs only, not talking about toads. Okay, how do frogs get their water? Tricky question or not? They absorb it through their skin. They don't drink water through their mouths like us. They absorb it directly. And some species have a specialized area on their belly and underside of their thighs called a drinking patch that is used for absorbing water. So one of those reasons why you're not really supposed to, touch them. It's their mouths, really. Okay. Speaking of mouths, how do frogs swallow their food? Oh, Sarah, she's on it. they use their eyes. And then I think I have a video. I don't know if it's going to work, you know, that whole thing. Let's see, does it work? Ooh, let's see if it works. Oh, whoops. There we go. All right, silly. Okay, what is a group of frogs called? I don't see any guesses yet.
An army.
Group of frogs, group of frogs. Ah, Margot. I'm going to assume you didn't Google that. Yes, a group of frogs is called an army. A group of toads is called a knot, K-N-O-T. Okay. Oh, I just answered that, sorry. What is going on with my stuff here? Ah, okay. What is so special about frog saliva? And here's a picture of one of our Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs. This would be a lot of points, I think, in Jeopardy. It's a non-Newtonian fluid, which means it changes viscosity under stress. We'll have to discuss that later. Who has antibodies? I don't know. I don't know about that one. That's a good question on top of a question. All right, that completes our trivia. Just thought I'd do that to let you know, late folks trickle in. Okay. So thank you. I'm going to speak for maybe a half an hour, 40 minutes, and then we'll have time at the end to chat and ask each other questions, because I am definitely no expert. I've been working here for 13 years as a volunteer coordinator and ecologist, but you know, there's a lot to learn and be involved with on the mountain. So, like I said, I work for Marin Water, and the land that I work on is Mount Tamalpais. And it's the watershed here is the primary source for our water. We have reservoirs for water, but we also have, you know, a beautiful network of 150 miles in trails. It's an internationally recognized biodiversity hotspot, being a mountain and being in a Mediterranean climate. We've got serpentine grasslands, we've got all kinds of, you know, we've got wildflowers, lakes, creeks, redwoods. It's remarkable diversity is because it is a mountain and it's located near the coast, so it has a very topography, and also has a wide range of soils, which also includes the metallic serpentine. And this all creates unique niches for different plant communities and the animals that depend upon them. So there's Mount Tam in the background there. You can see East Peak is the tallest peak right there. So for you that aren't around here, we're located in Marin County, which is Northern California. We are pretty ecologically significant here. So the water district is in charge of about 20,000 acres of Mount Tam, but depending on where you draw the boundary, there's about 50,000 acres of open space on Mount Tam. Other lands on the mountain are managed by Mount Tamalpais State Park, National Park, and Marin County Park. So there's actually 4 government agencies that have jurisdiction over different parts of the land, and all together we're part of a collaborative called One Tam. That's a nonprofit. So in that area, we have 10 times the number of native plants that you would find per acre compared to Yosemite, and Yosemite is 20 times as large as Mount Tam. Of the 750 plus native plants known on Mount Tam. 6 are found nowhere else in the world, and 49 of them are listed as threatened, endangered, or rare. The mountain is home to 350 native animal species, 46 of which are officially listed as threatened, endangered, sensitive, or rare. So, you know, there's a lot here to be proud of and to protect. So today's session, we're going to go over Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs, a little bit more natural history about the area, how to identify these frogs, you know, where do the frogs fit in within the ecology and habitat of the area. We'll talk about threats to the frogs, how you can help, and then I'll give you a little teaser about volunteering with us. And I showed this slide because I will also be doing pretty much this presentation again on March 4th, and that's the part 1 of a 2-part training if you were to become a volunteer with us as a watershed ambassador or a frog docent. It takes a couple different trainings and requirements to then come out and work with us. And then you can come out with us and be spokespeople for the frogs and speak with the public about the resources and how to protect them. So just a little bit about what is a frog docent or watershed ambassador. So we need help from the community to protect these frogs and other sensitive species on the watershed. So the frog docents are available to be a low-key, positive resource and presence. They're out there to share updates about our programs and events, to ask questions, and just to, you know, to speak with the community. They're not out there to police people. We hope that our presence out there just reminds visitors to practice responsible behavior. And we do this in the spring. That's when the falls, we'll talk about the popular hiking place. That's when people go out there because it's the falls are flowing and it's beautiful. And it's also the same exact time as when the frogs are out there breeding and they're at their most vulnerable. So we've also seen an increase of visitors due to the pandemic, right? It's a good and a bad thing. Like, more people have realized like being outside is a space is a safe place to be. So with more foot traffic, this increases the need for docents. So yeah, we've found that docents have a great impact on the success and recovery of this species. So we're going to be talking a lot about frogs today. So I thought it'd be helpful to define what a frog actually is. Frogs are amphibians, which means they live their lives both in water and on land. Amphibians are cold-blooded vertebrates that have an aquatic gill-breathing larval stage, which is typically followed by a terrestrial lung-breathing adult stage. Other amphibians include toads, newts, salamanders. So the term frog is used to generally mean tailless amphibians and under the order Anura, which that Anura includes frogs and toads. But used strictly, frogs, they can be limited to the members of the family Ranidae, which our Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs are. And they are covered with a smooth mucus skin. They have long legs for leaping and for swimming. That's compared to toads, which usually have bumpy, dry skin, and their shorter legs for hopping. So the typical frog life cycle starts in fresh water, and they lay eggs in clutches of a few hundred to several thousand. The eggs hatch into aquatic larvae, which are called tadpoles, and then they metamorphose into a frog, depending on the species, within 2 months to 3 years. During that metamorphosis, the lungs develop, limbs appear, and the tail is absorbed. Like other amphibians, frogs are good indicators of stream, pond, and wetland health because they are thin-skinned, long-lived, and completely dependent on aquatic habitats for part of their lives. So this drawing is a great drawing by a woman named Serena Hubert. She is the wildlife biologist at Marin County Parks, which is one of our partners, and they have land that abuts our land in Marin County. So you can see in the bottom right, we have our little Pacific chorus frog, also known as the Pacific tree frog, and that's the smallest of the 3 native species up here, and they have the most stable population in Marin County. On the left, you see the California red-legged frog, which is the largest native frog in Western United States and is the California state amphibian. They are listed as federally threatened and are found in many streams of Marin and Mount Tam, but not really on watershed lands where I work. And at the top is the Foothill Yellow-Legged Frog, the reason we're here today. And here is that poster, but instead it's with photos, and those are all local photos taken in Marin. Okay, so we're going to dive deep a bit with the Foothill Yellow-Legged Frog. We're going to talk about their status throughout the state and the country and the natural history. Some of these slides are from the biological consultants that have been surveying our populations since 2004. So the current distribution of California, it's shown here on the map. There's 6 different colors. In April of 2020, 5 of the 6 clades, we'll call it, so they're all the same species, but then they're sectioned off in geographical locations. 5 of those 6 clades were listed as threatened or endangered per the California Endangered Species Act. Marin is in the northwest north coast clade, that dark army green. That is the only one that determined not to be under threat of extinction in the near future. So all the populations are still considered both a federal and state species of concern. From that map, it does show a wide range, but the frogs have disappeared from over 50% of their historic range. And we'll talk about, what threats are there. Like I said, we've been doing breeding surveys since 2004, and we believe that the populations we have are relatively stable, but they are vulnerable to decline due to their small size and isolation from other Foothill Yellow-Legged Frog populations. Here's a bit more information about, how we know what we know, since we've been monitoring them since 2004. And here's a map of the kind of 3 populations. 2 of them are on our land, and 1 of them is in the Marin County Parks land. These creeks, the populations, as far as we know, don't connect, but we've actually taken some swab samples a year or so ago, and we haven't got the DNA evidence back yet. So we haven't quite figured that out yet. But the same biological consultants go and survey all of these 3 locations every year. So Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs, let's talk about them. As you can see, their color varies, but they're, gray, brown, reddish, olive. They like to match the rocks in which they visit and live on. So they're perfectly camouflaged. And you can, their diet consists of both terrestrial and aquatic and flying invertebrates like insects and spiders and snails. There's a great photo there of the swollen nuptial pads that the males use to hook on to the females. So you can see there that the male is much smaller than the breeding female. And when you're looking for them, they're highly aquatic. Like when I go out to the falls with my binoculars, they're either in the water or maybe like 2 hops from the stream. So they really hang out right next to the water during breeding season. And of course, they're great indicators of the stream conditions, because they rely on these environments for breeding and for the metamorphic life cycle. Let's see. And the foothill yellow-legged frog, unlike the red-legged frogs, they need rapidly moving fresh water. So no like still ponds. So hence that they love this spot. That's a gorgeous waterfall. Here's some more variation in appearance of the foothill-legged frogs. These are all photos that staff or volunteers have taken. So I love, that's a really great thing. Another great thing to recognize our volunteers by using their incredible photos they've taken over the years. So here's another little quiz for you. So there are 5 foothill yellow-legged frogs in this photo. Can you find them all? There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. 4th. And where's number 5? There we go. And that's all up at Little Carson. And they don't move around too much. Like if you were out there for an hour or two, they don't hop around too much. So once you get, say, a spotting scope trained on them, it's great, because then more visitors come and they look at the frog that you've put the scope on. Okay, so adults migrate from their overwintering habitat and they come up to the breeding habitat in the spring, March through June. Let's see, I mentioned the amplexus, where the male goes on top and they fertilize the eggs externally when the female releases the frogs, and you can, the eggs, sorry, and you can see that in the upper photo. The males congregate at these prime breeding spots in the spring and they call underwater for the mates. So calls are really heard by people. They mostly call underwater. And yeah, they're obligate stream breeders. They have to, they need these streams to breed. Okay, so like I said, it's in the spring. Females usually lay 1 clutch of eggs per year, and they attach it to rocks underwater, or maybe I've also seen it on, like branches, things like that, but something pretty stable. And in one of those masses of eggs, they average about 900 eggs. So the females do lay eggs in areas that are vulnerable to human and animal disturbance, though. They need that flowing water. So they're not like deep underwater or, in a deep crevice, because they need constantly flowing water. And at least at in our locations, a lot of times you see the eggs exactly where, if you were to like walk across a portion of the falls, you might step on them, because that's where they lay their eggs. So there's also, they get eaten by predators. There's a cool picture of a tadpole down there. The tadpoles graze on algae and detritus, and they, you can see they leave little tadpole poop. So maybe you go out there and you see those little round rings and you don't see tadpoles, but that's an evidence that there's tadpoles there. This is a cool composite photo of the Little Carson area and the main breeding pools. We start with pool 0 down the bottom, and this actually goes up to pool 6. There's 2 more smaller pools above, and that middle pool, pool 3, is where most of the egg masses are laid, and that's also very easy for people to view from a safe distance. We also have Big Carson Creek. That's the second population on Marin Water land. There is a fire road that goes through there where bicyclists and staff vehicle can disturb foothill yellow-legged frogs. It's not as popular spot for visitors. It's way out there, so you don't get that kind of visitor disturbance. but sometimes they lay their eggs right in the road, and the biologists that do the consulting, they are allowed to move the eggs, and they average about moving 5 egg masses a year, and they just move it off the road, and typically those eggs develop, and they're safe that way. I mentioned our friends at Marin County Park. So they have a population of Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs at Cascade Canyon. And these frogs were only discovered 4 years ago by actually a kid and his mom, who was a biologist. And he said, "Hey, Mom, I think that's a frog." And so that was great. I don't know how, nobody realized there were Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs back there, but there are. So they are now also engaging volunteers and helping get the word out about protecting the space that's back there in Cascade Canyon. And this is all in Fairfax, California. I don't think I mentioned that. Okay, so, here we go. There's the recent discovery. And then just last year, when they did the survey, they found 41 adults and juveniles and tadpoles and egg masses. And it's not like there was 1 or 2, there's a bunch. So they discovered that in 2017. So it's cool now we're protecting this population as well. Oh, here's a big boring graph that if you want the report, I can send it to you. But in 2022, which I didn't update the graph, but I do have that we had 8 egg masses in Little Carson and 19 egg masses in Big Carson. And the record high number of egg masses we've seen since starting this was in 2017. And here's a graph with the same kind of data, and you can see the egg mass counts is trending upward a little, and the frog docent program is really doing great work. And you can see the results here that, with increased visitorship, we're not losing our frogs. So I love this slide. This is super cool that you can ID individuals with chin photos, kind of like those whale tail photos you see on, the nature channels, right? So, I mean, I can't tell that 2008 and 2017 are the same frogs, but other people can. So they've taken chin photos of about 600 individuals that have been tracked since 2008. And like I said, the computers aren't smart enough to match these photos, but the human eyes can. So here's an example of one male that's been recaptured. It was not recaptured in 2021 or 2022, but from this data, we can now estimate that this male is at least 15 years of age, which is pretty cool. Okay, so what are the predators? They have a lot of native predators, raccoons to birds to reptiles, even like insects, right? Depending on how big they are. So the main predators in our creeks are California giant salamanders, newts, and garter snakes. Those giant salamanders can be up to 1 foot long. And they can be in or out of the water, whereas the juveniles of those are aquatic. And they will eat frog eggs, tadpoles, and they'll eat the adults if they can catch them and go in their mouths. Rough-skinned newts and California newts are both predators of Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs. And then we have the aquatic garter snake, is actually the primary native predator of Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs. They're not poisonous, and they like to sit in puddles and ponds, and they flick their tongue out to lure their prey. And they'll eat tadpoles, eggs, frogs, whatever deliciousness they can grab up there. So other threats to Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs are, human disturbance, really. So the frog populations have declined significantly since the 50s. And frog populations, a third of the species are listed as threatened due to habitat destruction, climate change, pollution, and competition with invasive species, which is a human, introduced problem. So, the periodic, the change in water temperature could be a problem. Drought could be a problem. If we had high sediment loads, erosion, things like that. So they've got other things to contend with other than the native creatures that want to, eat them for lunch. Okay, so we're going to talk about two of the non-native predators. The first is the American bullfrog, which is highly invasive over here in California. It is native to North America, but east of the Rocky Mountains. So bullfrogs are voracious and they will eat anything that fits in their mouths. They are the largest frog found in North America, and they are one of the most successful amphibians in the world. They normally, in their native habitat, they have large predators like snapping turtles and alligators that keep them in check. But in Western North America, we don't have any effective bullfrog predators. So the biological consultants, they are allowed to remove bullfrogs from the creeks and get rid of them. And between 2011 and 2014, they removed 29 bullfrogs, and they haven't seen any since then, which is awesome. Let's see what else makes them great predators. They lay a lot more eggs than the frogs. A bullfrog might lay 20,000 eggs in one grouping compared to like the 1,000 of Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs, right? So here's my friend Serena again and her cool art. So now you're showing the relative size of our native frogs compared to the bullfrogs. So that's by size. So you can see how easily they would swallow up yellow-legged frogs. The other non-native predator that we're aware of is the signal crayfish, invasive species introduced to California about 100 years ago, native to Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Like bullfrogs, they are opportunistic feeders that will eat whatever they can catch. They can be 3 to 8 inches long. The biologists also removed crayfish when they found them. They haven't found too many, but they do. Okay, so back to us and our humans. So the last thing we're going to talk about is the human disturbance. And like I said, it's a really popular hike, and there can be a lot of foot traffic. So hikers or dogs wading in the creek could disturb the breeding adult frogs or possibly step on or dislodge the eggs. We have signs, we have fences. People, still walk through the creek and let their dogs run through it. And that's why we need frog docents to help educate the public and encourage good behavior. Here's some examples of that work that we've done on our lands. And these are actually photos from Marin County parks. So they've put in some new fencing since they found that population in 2017. They've added the annual surveys. And interpretive walks and signs have been a help. So I'm going to just give a little plug to our frog docent program for anyone who lives around here or maybe wants to look into their own their own backyard and see if their nonprofits or government lands have a program similar, or maybe you want to start your own. So we've had the frog docent program since 2005. And since that time, our docents have spoken with over 10,000 people. We have docents that can interact visitors right at the falls. Like I said, they set up a spotting scope so visitors can look through to have a good view of the falls. And just their simple presence, like a volunteer with a volunteer hat, with a clipboard, with some photos, just their simple presence really reminds visitors to practice responsible behavior. We started an additional outreach program a couple years ago because of the pandemic, right? We wanted to provide volunteers and visitors a socially distant event. So we've set out an outreach post at the beginning of the trailhead. So this photo here, you see they're up at the very top of the falls, and you have to kind of get close to each other for best viewing. But what we did is we set up, we have a thing called a TAM van, which is this roving ranger. And we put out, tables and all kinds of information, and there's room to spread out at the trailhead. So that's allowed us to provide better educational materials and to speak with more visitors than ever before. So now our volunteers can opt to do shifts at the TAM van, or they can hike up to this location, which is it's a 3-mile round trip hike. It's kind of uphill both ways, let's say. There's a great picture of the TAM van and a little bit about, what it takes to be a frog docent. You need some physical stamina, you need some mental stamina. You record data about how many people you've talked to and if people know about the frogs or not. Let's see. Yeah. So there's more information, and Carrie will send you info with my email after for if you have questions or want to become a volunteer. So like I said, this frog docents, ambassadors, there's 2 trainings that are required. So this educational just around frogs is March 11th. And then the second one is later in March that talks about how to use the TAM van to your advantage and what you can bring out, and the code and communication techniques, like how to speak with the public and how to get your message out. So I'll just plug out as the water district volunteer. We have lots of programs beyond frog docents. We also have a turtle observer program where we have folks do some community science, and they go out and they observe the turtles that we have in our lakes. We have native western pond turtles, which is the olive colored turtle up at the right hand side, and then we have non-native turtles, and they're compete for basking sites and everything else. And we that's a really great program for kids and families, and we get population data from that. And also like the frog docents, these docents go out and talk to people about how to take care of the watershed and get involved. We have habitat restoration, pulling weeds from the watershed. And we have other programs too with our partner agencies. We have programs around bats. We have programs around bees. We have programs about wildlife. So there's no shortage of cool ways to get involved on Mount Tam. So with that, I think we can open it up for questions, and I will try to answer them.
All right, thank you so much, Suzanne. All right, everyone out there, we've got time for questions about Foothill Yellow-Legged Frogs or this project or anything else on your mind amphibious. And I believe Julia would like to ask a question. I'm going to unmute you. If you want to be unmuted, you can speak.
Yeah, hi. I saw on the volunteer thing it said committing to 3 shifts. Is that 3 shifts in a month or in a week? What's that look like time-wise?
Gotcha. So yeah, we if people commit to going to all these trainings, then we hope that they commit to coming out 3 times during the season. So
the season.
Yeah,
okay.
March, April, May. And then
Right.
and a shift can be 2 hours, it could be 5 hours, but you have to come all the way up here, get the gear so usually people do about 3 hours. And every time you come out and do a shift, you get more confident in your ability to speak with people.
Beautiful, thank you. I live in the Bay Area, so I would love to.
Oh, you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, San Leandro, cool. So not too far.
No, not too far. Awesome.
All right, we have a question from Robert. Is the Bolinas Fairfax Road to Carson Falls trailhead still closed?
Hold on, let me think. It was closed. I think so. We've had a lot of rain in Marin County, if anybody's aware about that. So they had to close the main road a few weeks ago, and it's it's this week they're going to open it up again. I think as of right now, the gate is closed at Azalea Hill Trailhead. So you can park there and you can get up to Little Carson. They've moved, there was a gate closed a couple miles earlier at the golf course, but they've changed that. So yes, long story short, you can park and get to Little Carson right now, but you can't go beyond that parking lot. It's still closed because there's still giant trees down in the middle of the road.
All right, we have a question. Are there any volunteer opportunities for those under 18?
Sure. I mean, over the years, I've had a few frog docents who are under 18. Of course, they have to come with their parents. We ask that you're at least 18 to do this kind of work because you're way out, not way out in the wilderness, but you're out there. The habitat restoration is great for, second grade and above. That's really fun. That's also a great one because it's just a drop-in. We don't usually require that you sign up in advance. It's third Saturdays of every month. We usually add more dates, and you just come out, you get your donuts, you learn about where you are, you pull some invasive species, things like that. And the turtle docent, like I mentioned, is a really good family activity. If you're under 18, you have to be able to get up here. So that's definitely an issue, right? We're up on a mountain and there's no bus that comes up here. So that's a hurdle for folks, unfortunately. So you have to be able to get up here. But turtle docents, I'd say half of the docents are kids. And, they have better eyesight than most of us adults. So that's great.
Rhonda and Larry, thank you for a very clear presentation.
Oh.
Ray says there used to be frogs in Miller Creek, but he has not seen any in years. Do you have any comments?
I don't. Is Miller Creek in Mill Valley? I don't even know where Miller Creek is. Sorry.
All right, we'll await some more info. Sheila requests you to post your email in the chat for those who wish to volunteer or some way to get in touch. And
I'll put it up here too.
Robert asks, do you expect this heavy rain year to benefit the frogs? Why was 2017 a good year for the frogs?
Good questions. I hope that it's a great year. I mean, it's, not as droughty, very technical term, as the last few years. So I imagine we'll see what the flows are like, though, it's January. So the frogs don't really show up till February, March. So say we get no rain between now and then, we could go back down to like a trickle. I don't know. But it seems like it's going to be a good rain year, so there'll be good flows. Like last year, the flows weren't that big, but the frog population didn't, dramatically decline. Why 2017? I've read the reports, and it's all just there's so many different considerations. Not really sure. I can say sometimes when we've had like late spring rains, like really heavy late spring rains, that can scour away egg masses. So that's not good. So it's like you want just the right amount of rain. So yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but I don't.
Right,
Miller Creek is in Marinwood between, I don't know. I don't know about Miller Creek. I'm going to write a note to myself and find that out.
We have a question about legality of taking bullfrogs and red-eared sliders. I'm going to put in a URL right here. CaliforniaHerps.com has a page all about legislation. Mm-hmm. So unless you are prepared to answer that question, I think we should.
Yeah, I think the answer is kind of like no.
Well, go. Yeah, if you're interested in California laws related to amphibians, go to this page. All right, other questions?
Yeah, and the bullfrogs, like I said, it's at least in the Little Carson Fall area, Thank goodness we haven't really seen any, and we do have those biologists. They go out about every 7 to 10 days, so that's great. We have other places where the bullfrogs, are definitely impacting, say, the turtle communities, and by pulling out a couple bullfrogs, you're not going to do anything. You need to there's thousands of them in our lakes, and so that would be, that's a very expensive undertaking, and that has not happened here as far as I know.
All right. I have an announcement. This coming Monday, we're going to have a Save the Frogs grants discussion. I'll be sending out an email and social media posts announcing that. We're going to start up weekly Save the Frogs events online, most taking place on Mondays and Tuesdays, and those are going to be on a variety of topics. We've got the grants discussion coming up because Save the Frogs grants round opens up February 1st, runs through March 1st. That's open to individuals and organizations in the USA. Outside the USA, you must be affiliated with a nonprofit organization. SaveTheFrogs.com/grants. We've got the 15th annual Save the Frogs Day coming up April 28th, 2023. I encourage all of you to get involved, especially if you are affiliated with an organization. Maybe you can get your organization holding a Save the Frogs Day event in your community, and any way that you have in mind to educate the public or otherwise assist amphibians, that would be great. We have a page, SaveTheFrogs.com/register, where you can register your Save the Frogs Day event so that we know it's taking place and so that we can stay in touch with you about it and even get it up on a webpage on SaveTheFrogs.com. All right, we have a question about coho salmon. Do you know a good spot in Marin to observe coho salmon spawning right now? And we have a response. Salmon at Samuel Taylor State Park. Coho are mostly done, but steelhead are out spawning. If you want to add to that, feel free to. A huge thank you again to Suzanne, and thanks also to all the volunteers out there. I was happy to hear you all have educated 10,000 people about these frogs. That's really amazing. All right, I think we're going to call that good. So I hope to see you soon. I'm going to build a page, SaveTheFrogs.com/events, very shortly, and that's where you're going to be able to see a list of all upcoming events. So I hope to see you back here soon. Stay in touch. Save the Frogs is on all major social media at Save the Frogs. I know that Marin Water has at Marin Water. So connect on social media, and good luck to all of you out there with your own amphibian conservation efforts. Bye.